Think about the last time you were praised for your resilience.
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Right. Like maybe you were facing an impossible deadline or managing a personal crisis or, just carrying the weight of a dozen different obligations all at once.
Yeah, just juggling everything.
Exactly. And you push your head down, you gritted your teeth, and you just pushed through the pressure. And people probably applauded you for
They
it.
usually do, yeah. They admire your grit.
Right. They admire the grit. But what if the very resilience you're being praised for is actually like the biggest liability to your long-term success? What if that solitary instinct to just whisper, I've got this, is actually what's holding you back?
Is a huge question. Because we are so conditioned to view that hyper-independence as like the ultimate proof of competence.
Hmm.
Society tells us that the ability to shoulder immense burdens entirely on our own is the gold standard of strength. But when you actually examine the mechanics of high achievement and sustainable success, you realize that isolation is a profoundly fragile strategy.
Which brings us to the mission of this custom-tailored deep dive. We are unpacking this really paradigm-shifting essay by Tony Pretorius. It's titled The Art of Asking for Help: Why Strong Women Lean on Others.
It's such a great piece.
It really is. And for you, if you have ever felt suffocated by the pressure to handle absolutely everything yourself, the concepts in this text offer a complete structural rewrite of how you operate.
Yeah, it really does.
Because the core argument here is that asking for help isn't a concession of weakness.
Huh.
It's actually a highly strategic shortcut to deeper connection, superior problem solving, and like building a robust community.
Right. The author explores this fundamental transition from a solitary, kind of guarded mentality to a really collaborative, interdependent approach.
Hmm.
We're looking at how making that single pivot changes not just your immediate stress levels, but the entire trajectory of how you engage with your work and the people around you.
Yeah.
But it requires completely dismantling our preconceived notions of what strength actually looks like in practice.
Right. And before we can even touch on the mechanics of reaching out, I mean, we have to examine why the resistance to it is so deeply ingrained in us.
Oh, for sure.
Pretorius spends a significant portion of the essay dissecting this conditioning, specifically targeting what they call the myth of the superwoman.
Yes, that part is so vivid. The essay provides this incredible profile of the author's mother. And, this is an archetype you have likely encountered, or maybe even embody yourself.
Totally.
This was a woman who was a teacher, a single parent, a nighttime choir director, and then on top of all those formal roles, she functioned as the unofficial on-call therapist for the entire neighborhood.
Just a staggering volume of responsibilities.
Right. But the crucial observation the author makes is about the performance of that labor.
Yes, the performance.
This mother navigated her chaotic life with what Pretorius calls a graceful urgency.
Oh, I love that phrase.
It captures the illusion perfectly, doesn't it? She made relentless stamina look like a natural biological trait, like a birthright, rather than this cultivated, exhausting skill that requires massive amounts of hidden energy.
Yeah, and when you witness that kind of effortless performance modeled as a child or, celebrated in your colleagues, you internalize a very specific definition of success.
You really do.
You start equating visible effort or the need for rest with failure. You just assume that if you're truly capable, the struggle shouldn't be visible.
Exactly. Pretorius crystallizes the danger of this cultural conditioning with this really powerful observation. They write, when women are taught to be the pillars of strength, the weight they carry becomes invisible, and so does the need for support.
Wow. It reminds me of the dynamics of holding your breath underwater.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because you dive in and everyone standing on the edge of the pool is clapping for your incredible endurance. They're so focused on the impressive nature of your resilience that they completely ignore the biological reality that you are slowly suffocating. Yeah.
It's an incredibly impressive feat right up until the exact second your lungs give out and you desperately need oxygen.
And the worst part is the applause actually tricks you into staying underwater longer than you should.
Yes.
The external validation just overrides your internal distress signals. You start believing that breaking the surface for air would be like a disappointment to the audience.
It's so toxic.
It is. Our culture reinforces this constantly. We mythologize the lone wolf who conquers the world single-handedly. But that celebration carries a silent, punitive counterpart. We applaud the breath holding, but we harshly judge the gasp for air.
The paradox is brutal because, we demand vulnerability and authenticity in all our leadership seminars.
Oh, all the time.
But In practice, revealing that you're overwhelmed often feels like violating the terms of your own success. If your entire identity or your professional brand is built on being that unshakable pillar of strength, asking for help feels like pulling the load-bearing beam out of the building, which means we have to fundamentally alter what the ask represents in our minds.
Yeah.
If the superwoman mentality forces our burdens into the shadows, breaking free requires recognizing that asking for help is not a collapse of the structure.
Right.
It's actually bringing in reinforcements to expand the building.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Because looking at this through a psychological lens is one thing, but let's apply it to a cutthroat corporate environment.
Sure.
If I walk into my manager's office in a highly competitive firm and say, I am running on empty, I can't handle this project alone, I am essentially handing them a documented reason to pass me over for the next promotion.
That's the fear. Absolutely.
Right. In those environments, perception is reality, and asking for help is often perceived as plain incompetence.
It's the exact fear that dictates behavior in most high-stakes environments. We believe that hiding the struggle protects our reputation. But Pretorius addresses this directly by dissecting a mid-career crisis that illustrates why the opposite is actually true.
Oh, right, the hospital story.
Yeah. The author was managing a massive, high-stakes project deadline at work while simultaneously dealing with a severe personal crisis. Their father was undergoing major surgery.
Just a total collision of domains. You have the unforgiving timeline of the corporate world crashing right into the unpredictable emotional chaos of a hospital.
Exactly. A scenario that demands immense cognitive bandwidth. And because of the exact fear you just outlined, the terror of appearing less than perfectly competent to their team, the author chose to shoulder the dual burden entirely in secret.
Wow.
They navigated hospital corridors, endured sleepless nights, and just tried to mask the exhaustion on conference calls.
Which is impossible to sustain.
Right. The attempt to preserve the illusion of competence actively destroyed their actual performance. The sheer cognitive overload caused their work to slip. Their stress became totally unmanageable. They were failing at the project precisely because they were trying to protect their image of being able to handle the project.
The "I've got this" shield became the very thing crushing them. The irony is that by trying to avoid looking incompetent, you guarantee that your work quality drops to an incompetent level.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. And the turning point in the essay comes after a particularly grueling day, when the author finally hit a breaking point. They called a teammate, Maya, and simply asked if Maya could cover a critical client presentation the following morning, just admitting that they were completely running on empty.
Which feels like stepping off a cliff in a professional setting.
Terrifying.
You are handing your professional fate to a colleague and exposing your absolute limit.
And the anticipated outcome in our fear-based minds is judgment or rejection. But Maya's response dismantled that fear instantly.
What did she say?
She was warm, supportive, and simply said she was glad to be told. She offered to run through the material together right then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That brief exchange did much more than salvage a client presentation. It catalyzed a profound relief and forged a significantly deeper layer of trust between them.
Because giving someone that level of transparency is actually a profound sign of respect.
Yes.
When you show a colleague the reality behind the curtain, you're signaling, I trust your character enough to show you my humanity. It shifts the dynamic from a transactional workplace relationship to a genuine alliance.
And that shift is the central reframe of this deep dive. Pretorius argues that we have to stop viewing the request for help as a moment of desperation or surrender. It must be recognized as an act of courageous communication.
Courageous communication.
Right. Reaching out is not a declaration of weakness. It is a strategic declaration of agency. You are assessing the board, recognizing a deficit, and taking deliberate, proactive steps to acquire the necessary resources.
You're taking control of a spiraling situation rather than letting the situation dictate your failure.
Exactly.
There's a quote from the text that captures this pivot perfectly. They say, when a woman asks for help, she rewrites the script of her own narrative, granting herself permission to inhabit both vulnerability and power.
We rarely pair those two concepts.
Almost never.
Vulnerability and power are treated as mutually exclusive states in Western corporate culture. But the essay posits that robust, sustainable power is impossible without vulnerability. A structure that cannot flex or distribute its weight when under pressure is brittle, it will eventually snap.
So, We see the immediate tactical advantage of reaching out in an acute crisis. It saves the presentation, it preserves your sanity.
Right.
But Pretorius pushes this philosophy much further. The argument is that interdependence shouldn't be reserved as an emergency ripcord. It should be the baseline operating system for strong individuals.
Yes, the author unpacks the mechanics of why leaning on others is a constant strategic advantage. And it's rooted deeply in how we function biologically, intellectually, and emotionally.
Let's delve into the biological and sociological aspect first.
Yeah.
The text notes that women, historically and culturally, have been heavily socialized to nurture relationships, prioritize empathy, and build community cohesion. And in highly individualistic, hyper-competitive business cultures, that socialization has often been weaponized. It's framed as a dependency or a lack of hard-edged leadership.
But it has been wildly misinterpreted. Evolutionary psychology and sociology show us that survival and progress have always relied on cooperative networks, not isolated individuals.
Right.
The socialization to nurture and connect doesn't produce dependency. It engineers highly adept, resilient networks of mutual support.
It's the tend and befriend response versus the fight or flight response.
Exactly.
Under stress, building a coalition is often vastly more effective than trying to punch your way out of a problem alone.
When you utilize those communal instincts, you're activating a highly evolved social design. A cohesive network shares the cognitive load, it distributes emotional stress, and it identifies threats much faster than a single processor working in isolation. You aren't draining a resource by leaning on your community. You are operating the machinery as it was designed to be used.
Which flows perfectly into the intellectual advantage of interdependence. Pretorius argues that isolation creates fragile ideas, whereas collaboration creates robust solutions.
The strategic insight here is based on the limitation of individual perception. The author describes facing severe branding dilemmas, complex financial puzzles, and technical glitches that just felt insurmountable when tackled alone.
We've all been there.
Right. But the friction wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was a lack of varied perspective. When they invited other minds into the problem, entirely new pathways opened up. Pretorius writes, "The greatest breakthroughs often occur at the intersection of two minds, where one's blind spot becomes another's lantern."
I want to linger on that imagery for a second. The blind spot becoming a lantern.
It's beautiful.
It reframes collaboration entirely. Inviting a colleague into a problem isn't offloading your burden onto their shoulders. It is creating a cognitive collision. You are bringing your deep context, they are bringing fresh eyes, and the resulting synergy produces an outcome that literally did not exist before that conversation.
It creates anti-fragility in your work. A solitary mind gets stuck in its own neural ruts. Bringing in external expertise disrupts those patterns and propels the project forward with an entirely new momentum.
So we have the sociological advantage of the network and the cognitive advantage of diverse perspectives, but the most emotionally resonant aspect of Pretorius's argument focuses on how asking for help functions as a mechanism for internal validation.
Yes, this part is crucial.
Reaching out isn't just about solving the external problem, it is about reinforcing our own inherent worth.
It moves the concept from a logistical strategy to an act of deep psychological maintenance. Because we often operate under the subconscious belief that our worthiness is tied strictly to our utility, like how much we can produce or how flawlessly we can perform.
And the essay includes an anecdote that illustrates how easily that illusion shatters. The author recounts leaving a brutal, highly critical meeting.
Oh, those are the worst.
We have all experienced that specific kind of professional devastation. You walk out of the room, and every insecurity you carry feels violently validated. The instinct is to retreat, to lick your wounds in private so no one sees how deeply your confidence has been shaken. But instead, the author texted their sister on the other side of the country.
And the response from the sister is fascinating. Because she didn't offer tactical advice. She didn't try to solve the professional dilemma or analyze the meeting. She simply sent an old family photograph alongside a text message that read, "You are exactly the person we needed when you were born. You're still that person."
Oh, wow. The psychological impact of that message is just profound.
It really is.
By reaching out, the author allowed someone else to hold their emotional weight for a moment. And the sister's response circumvented the professional failure entirely to validate the author's fundamental existence. It proved that support and love are not transactional rewards for being perfect, they are constants.
That realization lifts the invisible weight we discussed earlier. It affirms that you do not have to earn your right to be supported through flawless execution. You are inherently worthy of care, even when you are actively failing.
And When you internalize that level of self-worth, it triggers what the text refers to as the ripple effect.
Yes.
The impact of asking for help refuses to stay confined to the individual. It fundamentally alters the behavioral ecosystem around them.
Because vulnerability is highly contagious. The author provides a case study of this effect involving a friend. Pretorius and this friend shared a very candid, unfiltered conversation about the crushing weight of their respective obligations and the reality of feeling overwhelmed. They basically removed the superwoman mask in front of each other.
Which strips away the illusion that everyone else has it perfectly figured out.
Precisely. And sometime after that conversation, that same friend approached her manager and initiated a really difficult negotiation for flexible working hours to accommodate a new baby at home.
Oh, that's huge.
It is. She later told Pretorius that witnessing a peer openly acknowledge their limitations and ask for support without a trace of shame was the catalyst. It dismantled her own fear. Seeing the vulnerability modeled normalized the behavior and made advocating for her own needs feel entirely possible.
I mean, think about the leaders or mentors who have actually impacted how you operate. The ones who project an impenetrable aura of perfection inadvertently create a culture of silence.
Absolutely.
They communicate, without saying a word, that struggling is unacceptable. But a leader who openly asks for input, who admits when they are out of their depth, grants implicit permission for the entire team to do the same. As the essay states, one woman's vulnerability becomes another's roadmap, and a single act of asking can illuminate an entire community.
You transition an environment from a collection of isolated people silently suffering into an integrated ecosystem of mutual uplift. The culture shifts from competitive endurance to collective efficacy.
Now, understanding the sociological and psychological benefits of this philosophy is one thing, but deploying it when you are paralyzed by stress requires practical frameworks.
Right. It's hard in the moment.
The essay emphasizes that shifting from isolation to interdependence requires deliberate cognitive reframing, not just a list of actions to memorize.
And the application relies on rewiring your immediate internal responses to stress. The first major cognitive shift involves catching and rewriting your internal monologue.
Okay.
When you hit a wall and that familiar inner voice insists, I should be able to figure this out on my own, you must actively intervene.
So you have to replace the but with an and.
Exactly.
Instead of thinking, I am a capable professional, but I need help, which implies a contradiction, you shift the narrative to, I am highly capable and I have a network of allies who can amplify my efforts. It removes the shame from the equation. You are not substituting your capability, you are augmenting it.
Spot on. The second framework shift focuses on the intention behind the outreach. The specific medium like a quick text message, formal email, or a conversation over coffee is largely irrelevant. What matters is the subtext of the communication.
It goes back to the concept of courageous communication. You aren't just dumping a problem on someone out of panic. You are intentionally selecting them and saying, I value your specific expertise or perspective, and I am choosing to invite you into this process.
That intentionality honors the person you are asking. It positions the request as a collaborative opportunity rather than a desperate play.
And the final shift the text outlines is how we handle the resolution of the ask. It's about moving beyond a transactional thanks for the save to actually acknowledging the emotional or cognitive labor the other person just provided.
Yes.
Using phrasing like, thank you for holding space for me, or I appreciate you lending your perspective to this.
Acknowledging the specific nature of the support makes the dynamic reciprocal. It demonstrates that you recognize the true value of what they offered. When people feel their labor is genuinely seen and respected, it deepens the relationship and lays the groundwork for future collaboration. It creates a sustainable feedback loop of trust.
So as we synthesize the core arguments of Pretorius's essay, the ultimate takeaway is a complete reevaluation of how we map the journey to any significant goal.
The solitary road is celebrated, but it is ultimately inefficient and exhausting. Asking for help is not a detour. It does not delay your progress or diminish your achievements. It is a strategic bridge over obstacles that would otherwise stall you indefinitely.
Right.
Moving from I've got this to let's figure this out together transforms a brutal endurance test into a dynamic, shared endeavor.
The author closes the essay with an anonymous quote that beautifully anchors this entire philosophy. The strongest women are not those who never fall. They are the ones who rise every time they do, supported by the hands that reach out to them.
True resilience is inextricably linked to our capacity for connection.
We discussed how the ripple effect changes the environment around you, how one person dropping mask gives everyone else the freedom to breathe. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a question to examine in your own circle.
It's a powerful one.
If your dedication to hiding your struggles is actively maintaining a culture of silence, who in your life is silently waiting for you to ask for help? Whose invisible weight could you help lift today, simply by having the courage to admit that you cannot carry yours entirely alone? Until next time.